feels amazing to be here. Make some noise, MozCon. So I'm not gonna rap this time, but I do have a story. And you guys can start the clock. I've been on the internet for a really long time. Like, I've been on the internet more than all right, if you like split my life in half, I've spent more time on the internet than not on the internet. And when I was like 14, I was a bit of a computer hacker. And the first place to ever hire me to do anything on the internet was a web space company that I'd continued to hack. And the guy came on the Unix chat one day, he was like, hey, please stop hacking us, I'll pay you to do something. And he said to me, why don't you just write some tutorials for CGI scripts? I was like, cool. He paid me $150 and I used it to buy sneakers. And the reason I say that is because back then I was really into computer hackers, people like Kevin Mitnick, who used to hack the government. And it's interesting that these days, the government is hacking us. So many people are scared of big data right now because of the fact that the NSA is listening to your phone calls. Well, if you've looked at the terms of service on the apps on your phone, there's a lot of apps that are doing exactly the same thing. So if you look at the Facebook Messenger app terms of service, they can listen to your calls whenever they want to. They can take pictures and video whenever they want to. They can read your phone log. You might notice that the people that you text that aren't friends of yours on Facebook start to pop up in the section that says, do you know this person? It's because of this. And it's all very reminiscent of this scene in Dark Knight, where Bruce Wayne shows Lucius Fox this monitoring thing he has where he can listen to people's cell phone calls and then fight crime using that. And Lucius Fox says, this is wrong. And then they use it to save the world. But the thing is, it's not just that, how people are tracking you. If you're using a loyalty program for discounts at supermarkets, they're tracking you. If you're using credit cards, they're tracking you. And then that data is sold back to you, or back to marketers rather, to do things like this. If you guys remember Target a few years back, there was some coverage about a woman who Target was targeting because they knew she was pregnant based on what she was buying. And hospitals are getting in on the game now. They're figuring out when you're going to be sick based on the things that you're buying. So you can opt out, of course. But the thing is, to do that, you're going to have a web experience that's not modern. You have to turn off JavaScript. You have to not have a Google account, not have a Facebook account. You have to go on all these registries and things. But the reality is, this data is here to stay. None of you are going to do all the things that I just showed you. You're all going to continue to contribute to big data. And with that point, although there's a thin line between the nefarious things that Facebook is doing and the NSA are doing, what I'm going to show you today is not inherently evil. Let's talk about lead generation. When I say lead generation, you probably get an image in your head that looks like this. The model that we hear about from HubSpot about attracting users, converting users, closing users, delighting users, and then all the touch points that go with that. And when you think about lead generation, one of the key components of that is lead scoring. Figuring out how qualified people are by who they are and the actions that they complete on the website. And I think about that, and I go, but isn't that all digital marketing? We do this for everything. So let's talk about how that applies to more than just lead generation. It's how HubSpot is reducing churn. They have something called a customer happiness index, or CHI. And they've used that to reduce churn of unhappy customers by 33%. If you saw a post that Dan Barker wrote a couple weeks back about how BuzzFeed is now capturing tons of data on you and then ultimately using that for suggesting other content that you can look at. It's how Netflix and Amazon work. They do something called collaborative filtering. And that's just a fancy word that says if people that fit this criteria do A, they're likely to be interested in B. So it's exactly what Target is doing as well. What we talked about a few seconds ago, it's the same exact thing. Now, obviously you can do that, or I wouldn't be up here standing here talking to you about it. And for those of you who haven't seen the Sherlock Holmes television series, these images are from that. And I'll tell you how that fits in a second. So, first we have to talk about the data that you can capture in order to do things like this. Now, Google is doing something like this right now. They have what they call the database of Affinity. And if you remember, back in the end of 2011, they consolidated their privacy policies, which means that all of Google's tools across their ecosystem can now communicate. And they're using that big data to model people. And the thing that's cool about that is the applications of it. So what I think we're seeing with Google now is the beginning of the personal internet valet. Google wants to figure out, by your digital body language, what is it that you want before you specify that you want it? And they're already doing that with Google now, and it's only going to get better. And they have something called affinity segments, which you can use in paid media to target specific types of people. And it's really cool because you can measure in Google Analytics these affinity segments. So I've obviously talked a lot about personas and things. This is the opportunity where you can really easily measure people. But post-engagement measurement is not enough to do what we're talking about here. What you need is that data in real time, because you want to know what your customers care about or who they are before they make any specific action, like giving you an email address or downloading content. So let's talk about that. Normally, I would say use social sign-in for this. But social sign-in is difficult. You have to incentivize people in order to get them to do that, right? And I've talked a lot about Facebook Connect because Facebook Connect gives you the most granular data. That's one of Facebook's superpowers. They have so much market research data on their users. And so Facebook is the preferred sign-in. The study from the first quarter of 2014 shows that 42% of people use Facebook as their sign-in, their preferred sign-in method. And the thing about that is that Facebook button is on the decline. People are scared to sign in with Facebook because of all the spam that just ignites their timelines afterwards. So what Facebook is doing is putting out this anonymous login. So you're not going to be able to use that Facebook data the same way as much anymore because people will use this instead. And Facebook is like, okay, you guys use this so you can test out whether this app is something you want to log in with, and then you can come back and give the site your data. But realistically, more people will end up using this. So Google and LinkedIn are the go-tos for B2B as far as social sign-in. But there's less data there. And I say that, and you might be like, no shit, Sherlock. Okay, well, let's talk about some other stuff. What you want to do is be able to identify your user. And there's a concept called browser fingerprinting. So every browser has a different combination of plugins, fonts, user agents, your resolution, the offset of your computer's clock with the internet clock. All those things can be used to create a unique string. And then you can use that to identify users, right? So Panther did a study on this. There's about 400,000 users that came to the site. And they found that the browser fingerprint is 86.3% unique across users. And another study really highlighted a problem with the browser fingerprint. On mobile devices, the technology stack is generally the same. Like my iPhone versus your iPhone will have the same browser fingerprint. But if you then add the IP to that, you're getting closer to 100% again. So it's an effective way to measure people. So at this point, you got to think about how changeable are these. Because if somebody disables a plugin or installs a new font, then their browser fingerprint changes. And they found across their 400,000 users that 37.4% of them changed fingerprints. And there's a caveat to that data point because the site that they did this on, they explicitly said, hey, this is about browser fingerprints. So everybody was now aware of the browser fingerprint and likely changed it because of that. So to do this, you use this library. It's called fingerprint.js. It's a JavaScript library, and you use one line of code, and you can now get the fingerprint for your user. That is now their unique ID that you can now measure them against when they come to your site. So you want to track this in Google Analytics using custom variables. So now you can specifically understand which user did what based on their clickstream activity and tying them back to that unique identifier. Additionally, you want to do tracking of events for when they sign in or when they come to the site. So then you have those macro trends across your analytics as well. And you might say, well, I could just use cookies. Yeah, you could. But people delete cookies pretty heavily. I think the data I saw was about 36% of people will delete their cookies. But the thing is, they have something called EverCookie. And what that does is it installs the cookie into a variety of different places across the browser, and then anytime one of those places is deleted, all of them repopulate. So it's cookies that you can't get rid of. Okay, so you're like, yeah, you can track people. Big whoop, right? Well, do you know what you can get from an IP address? Let me tell you. This is MaxMine. It's a geo-IP location service where you can send an IP address to get a variety of data points on a given user. So you can get the country they're from, the city they're from, their longitude and latitude. You can get their zip code. If it's on a company network, you can get their organization, the domain name for that organization, right? Now, MaxMine says they have 83% city-level accuracy. So that's how accurate they say they can identify you at, right? But you can use IPM.io, which is a cheaper thing that is basically reselling MaxMine's data, and then you get it straight from their API. So you can use the zip code from that user to then get their census data. So you know all the different data points that you can grab from the census. So what percentage of the people in that zip code are female or male? Or what type of jobs do these people generally have? Then you can use this PHP library to, again, get this pretty quickly because it's just a few lines of code. From there, you can use that location and the geolocation APIs that Google Maps allows you to have to get their address. One caveat with that is that you only get 200 API calls per day unless you are Google Maps for Business Enterprise Edition. So you know those folks at Microsoft, they have that little search engine Bing that nobody uses? Well, they're so happy to give us free data. Bing Maps gives you 30,000 API calls a day for free. And then you know that other navigation software that no one uses anymore, MapQuest? They'll give you all their data for free. So you have the address now. There's the Whitepages API. They have a reverse Whitepages API. You send that address to it, you now get that person's name, phone number, and age. From your IP address, I can know exactly who you are. Think about that. So they say they only have 83% accuracy from MaxMine. You can use the HTML5 geolocation API to get a specific location on a user. And if you ever are on a website and it says, thedailynews.com wants to use your location, allow or deny, that's what this is. And they could be doing any of these things with that data. Okay, now let's kick it up a little further. You know what the company is. You know what the domain name is. You can ping the Crunchbase API and get firmographics. So number of people that work at that company, what industries are they in, so on and so forth. Oh, what funding rounds have they done? Then, let's say you're trying to qualify people for SEO. Well, you can take that domain, send it to the SEMRush API, and then get their paid search spend. So, we know this company on my site right now spends 250 grand in paid search. Yeah, they're probably a qualified lead. And then you can also take that company and then ping that domain name against built with to get the technologies that they are built with. So the use case for this, let's say I am Unbounce, right? And clearly my competitor is Optimizely. And somebody comes to my site, I know what their domain is, and then I find out that they're using Optimizely. So when they land on my site, I highlight the content about why we're better than Optimizely as soon as they land on the homepage. That way, you can do far more effective targeting. But built with is really expensive. And there's a Chrome extension called Whap Eliza that does the same thing. And there's libraries for free that you can download and then use. So you can also use that location to get the weather of the area that the user is from. So let's say, for example, I'm a plumber, and I have a special for rain damage, or I don't know, I can't even complete the memo for it because I don't know much about plumbing. But anyway, you can highlight content around what you would do when it's raining. So what about an email address? Because I mentioned that a second ago. I'm glad you asked. Rapleaf, you can get demographic data from an email address. And they give tons of data. They give you household income, presence of children, what type of job this person has, so on and so forth. These are all the data points that they offer. It's a ton of them. Then there's everybody's favorite vacation, paid vacation company, Full Contact. You give them an email address, they'll give you a ton of that demographic data as well, but they also highlight social media profiles. So you can get a user's Twitter handle and their number of followers and all their different social network data. And they also have something called the company API that they're coming out with, which is really similar to like a Hoover's or data.com, but it's supposed to be a lot cheaper with the same type of data. So again, you can do that firmographic targeting as well. So you might ask, how does this affect my privacy policy? There's no room in my mind palace for that. You're going to have to ask your legal team. So let's talk about marketing automation. Marketing automation is a really cool space that we don't really talk about that much as SEOs and such. And it allows you to do really effective personalization of your content. When I say personalization, I'm mostly talking about making meaningful changes to the content based on the user. So on the left here, you have the logged out experience that everyone sees. On the right, you have something that says like, start your project now, because you're already signed in and signed up. So you can make these as personalized as you want based on the data that you can collect. And it's already proven that simple offers are effective in increasing conversion. So there's a tool called Rocketbolt. And all it does is it puts that little pop-out right there that says, we have an offer for you. There's no personalization or anything. And a lot of small businesses are seeing huge incremental sales just from these little offers. So I think the one that they highlight on the website, it was like $40,000 in incremental revenue just from this offer. So if we take that up another step further, you can do behavior-based personalization. Now this site is ModCloth. And what they're doing is based on the products that the shopper or the user puts into their shopping cart, they are then customizing the experience. So in this case, someone's putting plus size clothing in their shopping carts. Then that user comes back later, and the home page now has imagery highlighting plus size models. And they've seen a 14% increase in average order value from doing this. You can do location-based personalization. This is Visual Site Optimizer. They just put a little CTA on there that says we're hiring in New Delhi or something like that. And they only showed it to people from New Delhi, and then they got 149% increase in conversion. So you might think, all these tools and data and APIs you're showing me, isn't there just like one tool out there that does all these things? Of course there is. Marketo is one of them. $1,000 a month for 10K unique visits. No, I can't afford that. Monetate, they're cool because it's drag and drop. You don't need any code. Minimum, $4,000 a month. I can't afford that either. Mentigo, they specifically do the scoring and the segmentation of users. They don't even have a published price, so you know it's expensive. Mindful, this is a lower tier product, and it's specifically for e-commerce sites. And they have a free trial of 14 days. They have like predictive analytics capabilities, and it's $99 a month. But the site hasn't been updated in over a year, so I don't even know if it actually still works. And then there's Leadlander, which is something that we use at a former agency that I once worked at back in the day. and it costs $2,000 annually. And all it does is tells you the organizations that came to your site. It doesn't give you that data in real time at all. It's just like another analytics tool. The thing is, everything that I've just showed you, you can build yourself for a fraction of the price. And the thing is, tools like Marketo, you still need a developer involved to implement it. So why am I going to pay you for a piece of software that I then have to pay someone else to put on my site when I can just have that person take these libraries and do it themselves? So what Marketo does specifically in its lead scoring or predictive modeling and everything is tracks user data, tracks customer data, and then does some predictive modeling. I've shown you tools so far in data that covers those first 2 points. The only thing that we can't do so far is predictive modeling. Now, in the Sherlock Holmes show on the BBC, he basically makes deductions about people when he just like walks up on them. Like, I just met you, you know, based on how you move and what you're wearing and the stains on your clothes, I know who you are, right? And these cool word clouds happen in the show and you like see his deductions. It's an awesome show. And anyway, that's what I want you to do with this. So when we talk about user engagement scoring, that is really to simplify analytics. Analytics, obviously, as it stands, is great. We can dig through granular data all day and figure out whatever we want. But simplifying it by applying scores to each different thing allows you to set it up for predictive analytics. And it also quantifies specific actions. So when a user fills out a form, of course we measure that as a conversion, but if we give that a value, these things add up over time. And then you can determine how engaged somebody is. Are they going to churn? Are they likely to buy this object? Are they likely to read more content? We now have a score that says what that is. So I generally follow this schema when I do this. If it's a score of less than 40, then they're not engaged. They're likely to churn. They're not coming back to your website. They won't read more content. 40 to 80, they generally can go either way. 80 to 100, they're highly engaged. They will be a fan for a long time. And here's an example of what this model looks like. This is for a CRM client that I work on right now. And we have different tiers for each type of user. You have the unidentified user, the free user, free trial users, and the subscribers. And what you'll notice up here is that for a web page visit, we apply different score based on the channel they come from. So if they come from search, there's clearly an intent there that we can capitalize on. So that's a far more engaged user engagement than somebody coming from social media. And then what we do is we specifically identify high-value tasks. Like in the CRM case, adding a user or adding more deals are high-value tasks. And the more of these that they complete, the more engaged they are, the more likely they are to stay a customer. So once you set this up, you want to push these to Google Analytics, because again, you want to see what those macro trends are across all your users. But you're also going to want to have this in your own database. So at this point, you have these values corresponding with different actions. And Google has something called the Google Prediction API, where you can set these up and do any type of predictive modeling. They have, a lot of people use these for the recommendation systems like you see on Amazon and Netflix and such. And I don't have time to explain to you how this works, but I'm going to do a Moz blog post about it. You know it's going to be like 12,000 words. You'll know everything you need. So, if all this stuff sounds daunting to you, well, it sounded daunting to me at first. So I was like, I never took a statistics class. Despite the fact that I studied computer science, I never took a statistics class. So I checked out Udacity, and they have a really great course on it. They actually have a whole data science course that you can take, and it's for free. So check that out. Now, once you do know this, you can use a tool called R, which is essentially statistical computing. It's programming for math, right? And they have a cool class for this as well on Code School, again, free. And then there's a integrated development environment that you can use for that called RStudio. And it's really cool because you can integrate data from a variety of sources. So you can have Google Analytics data piping right into here, and then you can run your regressions or your predictive models right there and test them out. And then once you get good at R, you can actually build content experiences using just R. You don't have to know any other code but R in a tool called Shiny. So once you're good at R and you want to deploy some models, they have a specific cloud service called Domino Up that you can use to deploy those models at scale. And if you don't want to do any of that, there's something called Kegel, or Kegel, I don't know how you say it. And it's like 99 designs for data science. So you have these data science contests, you want people to solve your problem. You say, here's what I'll pay for it, you guys do it, you come back with all the stuff I need. Now, use cases for this data, because now we have a ton of it, right? Well, implementing this stuff across your website requires what we call a rules engine. And what that is a series of if-then statements that says, if this happens, or if a user does this thing, then do this thing. And here's an open source library for implementing that called Ruler. So you can use this for progressive profiling. And you'll find this on a variety of the marketing automation tools. I think HubSpot does this as well. So like you'll sign up on HubSpot and you have to give all your data. Next time you come back to download something else, it might just be one field you fill out. So this is governed by those rule engines. It says if user doesn't have this data and user is X, Y, and Z, then do this. You can do this for retargeting placements, which is a problem a lot of us have, where we are retargeting people that are already users. Well, you've identified these people with the browser fingerprint, and then you know that this is a user. So if this user with a browser fingerprint we know comes to the site, we don't retarget them. And you can use this for dynamic content display. So if we know a user comes from New York, they use a Mac, they come from Google, then we show this type of content. Or any number of different data points that we want to use to segment users. We show them different things with that rule. And then there's also something called EasyRec. It's an open source recommendation system. It more or less just bolts on to whatever you have, and then you set up those rules against that to make those recommendations through all that collaborative filtering. And using that tool, you can then do these types of things. So Samantha is a great platform for native advertising and for link building. But what they do is they recommend content to people to see in the bottom of sites like CNN.com and such. But also when they're writing blog posts, it suggests content based on what they're writing. So that's rule-based content recommendations. You can do that. And then you can do rule-driven product recommendations the same way Amazon does. And you can also do this based on social media data. So there's a component of Amazon where you can log in with Facebook, and then it'll pull your friends' interests in things, and then determine whether or not a given product is something they'd be interested in. And then you can also do prospect nurturing, so triggering emails based on actions on the website. And you can do that with Mandrill, which is the API for Mailchimp. And if you use Mandrill, then you can still use Mailchimp's WYSIWYG editor. And then Mailgun is another option, but there's no WYSIWYG editor. And you can also use a tool called Lucky Orange. So with Lucky Orange, you can watch users' sessions. Like you can see a video of how they went throughout your website. And if you pass your browser fingerprint to the tool, you now have a lot more measurement. You can specifically look at a user and how they interacted with your website, and then tie it back to other data. So I've done enough of these speaking events to know you're not going to do any of that. So I made you something. It's called Quantum Lead. This is a free platform that I made for you guys that you can install on your website and get all the data that I've been talking about. So what you do is you sign in with LinkedIn. And you can set up organization alerts. So what it'll do is, let's say, for example, you want to know when Microsoft is on your website. You set this up, and you'll get an email when they come to your website. So you can then look at what they look through, and then look at all the other data points, and do whatever else you want to do with that. And it only takes one line of code. It works just like your analytics platform. But if you want to actually access the data, it obviously takes a little more. So there's two functions that you want to care about. There's one called Quantum Leader, and that one will just pull back all the data I have on a given user. And then there's a function called Save Email. So if you capture an email address, you send that back to me, and then I get more data for you. Now, you get the real-time lead communications like I was talking about. You get the email saying Microsoft is on your website. If you have a tool like Olark or Lucky Orange, which both have real-time chats, you can then reach out to those people while they're on your website. And then you can convince them to buy whatever you're trying to buy. It also gives you visitor analytics. And I've just started this portion of it, so it's just tracking page views and then tracks when users get identified. But I'm sure I'll end up doing something cooler with it soon. So the use cases of that are endless. You can do anything once you know who is on your website. So what's the catch? Why would I give you all this data for free, right? I'm a marketer. Of course I want something, right? I need 1,000 signups before I turn it on. So there's like 1,300 people in this room. Make it happen. All right, so here's what you should do right now. You should set up a database. And take this back to your developers. You want to use a NoSQL database rather than a MySQL database. MySQL is fine, but NoSQL is a lot easier to use as far as the type of data you'll be collecting, so go with that. You want to install Quantum Lead. You want to connect your data to Google Analytics, like I was saying. Custom variables, easy enough. You want to install Lucky Orange, so then you get more data on the user and seeing their actual sessions. And then you want to add dynamic functionality to your site. And that sounds real easy to say, but it's pretty difficult. Because depending on how big the website is or whatever, you have to ingrain this from the functional standpoint. So you're going to have a lot of meetings and do a lot of content strategy to plan this out. But essentially, you want the experience to update based on the different data points that you get. And then you also want to be able to do triggered emails. And then you want to prepare for automation. So like I said, there's a lot of things that you can do here, but you want to start small. So maybe just a location-based personalization, because that's relatively easy. And then once you've seen some wins and improvements in conversion from that, then you go with a bigger project. And if you're doing things like recommendation systems, you got to be aware that there's something called the cold start problem, because you don't have enough data on users when you initially start out, so you have to wait until you collect enough data to then do effective recommendations. And then, of course, since there's actually development required for this, it's going to take time. But keep calm and keep coding. That's all I got. Hey, Cyrus.
You rock, man.
Thank you.
You rock.
Thank you.
I was feeling so dumb throughout that entire presentation. So I'm glad you made that tool. We're going to get 1,000 signups.
Yeah.
We're going to hopefully tweet that link, and we're going to retweet that link if you can. Right?
Yeah, do it.
That's right. We're going to publish a blog post. So retweet the heck out of that over the next few days. So we might have some time for Q&A, but first, I believe we were going to share something personal with you. We have a video to show about what you're going to be up to soon.
Yeah. So obviously, I didn't rap today, and a lot of people are like, "Why don't you rap?" Well, I have something for that. I'm actually doing something that I wanted to share with you guys. So can we roll the footage?
This is Mike King, the world's only rapper and digital marketer. When he's not optimizing inbound marketing for forward-thinking companies, you'll find him rapping and lecturing around the world on subjects from social justice to digital marketing. Mike's been just about everywhere, except South America. Mike wonders why that is and what the digital marketing and music communities are up to there. This is Peruvian-born marketer and globetrotter Ingrid Arnold, CMO of Viventura in Berlin. Ingrid knows that South America has a super exciting digital marketing community that is emerging and wants the world to know about it. When Ingrid tells Mike about the exciting developments happening in places such as Brazil, Argentina, and Peru, they come up with an idea. They decide to create Marketing Globetrotters. Marketing Globetrotters will bring the digital marketing community together through a series of free online marketing meetups across the continent. Online marketers will learn and share their knowledge about increasing online visibility, creating online brand communities, and more. And Mike will have plenty of opportunities to showcase and share his rap talents, performing at each event. Best of all proceeds from voluntary donations at each event will go to supporting local charitable projects organized by vSocial. This includes building vSocial centers where children in vulnerable areas get the educational and social help they need to thrive. But to do all this, Mike will need to make his way through mountainous wilderness, navigate his way across the Amazon River, and try not to get lost in South America's bustling cities. Will Mike ever want to leave South America? Or will he decide to start a new life there? Find out how you could also be part of this adventure at vventura.com/marketing-globetrotters. Join Mike and Ingrid as they discover the wonders of South America and meet the community along the way.
So yeah, what we're doing is that, and we're also having a contest where someone can come with us. So if you check out that URL, you can find out what it would take to come with us, and we're just trying to do something cool. So yeah, let's get into Q&A.
Oh, that's awesome. Do we have anybody at the microphones right now? No? I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Are you going to the pub crawl tonight?
You know it.
You know it? Okay. Let's tell people that the pub crawl does not start at any particular place. You can start at any of the pub crawls. We want to thank our partners who are sponsoring that, sponsoring the drinks, all the food. A lot of the speakers like Mike will be here tonight. If you have any questions for him, you can ask him then and wear them down. And Mike, thank you for bringing the awesomeness today.
Having me.
It's been incredible.
Thank you.